Innovators by Scandinavian Man, a podcast about our changing world with the people who influence it. On this show, we cover some of the best and brightest minds within design, culture, fashion, technology, and sustainability. Mostly, but not always, from a Scandinavian perspective. I'm Conrad Olsson, and my guest today is Fredrik Ekström, Creative Director of Tretorn. Tretorn is one of Sweden's oldest and most iconic outdoor and utility brands. For anyone growing up in Sweden, Tretorn rubber boots is a quintessential rain boot. Tretorn also produced one of the world's first ever sneakers back in the year 1900. Tretorn has been worn by royalties and athletes and celebrities from Björn Borg to Andre 3000. Lately, the brand has been spearheading the work towards a more sustainable clothing production, a work that has been led by Fredrik Ekström, who joined the brand in 2014. Fredrik founded the brand's Eco Essentials initiative and has run all their collaborations, including the latest one with British designer Nigel Cabourn. Fredrik, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Conrad.
So good to have you here. I'm going to jump right in with, I think, the most pressing question right now. Why has it been so important for you to focus on sustainability?
I mean, first of all, sustainability is something that is close to our heart, my heart. But when we started looking at Tretorn back in the days, when we were celebrating a 125-year anniversary, we're going through the archives and looking what have the generations before us done in the brand. And we found a lot of stuff that happened like in 1911. We started one of the first private daycares to take care of the workers in the factories. And also in 39 and 40s, we started to recycle rubber and make rubber from dandelions because of the lack of natural rubber because of the wars. Mm. And when we were going through the archives, we were wondering, like, what can we do with the brand for the next 125 years? So when the generations after us, 125 years in the future, we'll go through the archives and look back, what will they see? Like, what happened when we celebrated here?
So it was that broad of a perspective you had. It was not like, let's do this for next season. It's the next 100 years.
Yeah, the next 125 years was the perspective when we started thinking about it. So, but also, I mean, we are an outdoor brand to enjoy to be outdoor every day. And if the weather is changing and the nature is changing and the climate is changing, if we don't take responsibility now, the generations after us in 125 years, they won't have anywhere to be. So from our perspective, it was a big way to, like, we have it in our DNA since 1911 or since we started to protect from the Swedish weather, Scandinavian weather. And if we want to be part of that and protect that for the future, we need to do something now. And we wanted it to be not only a clothing line and not only to be like, okay, how can we change this product to be a little bit more responsible, or how can we make this into a marketing gimmick and get some bonus points for this season. So we founded an initiative that we call Eco Essentials. So it should be essential products. Doesn't have to be more expensive just because it's more eco-friendly. And then use that as a platform for ourselves to challenge how we think and challenge how we work and challenge how we innovate for the future. And slowly transforming everything step by step, starting with what we could do immediately and then learn from the different processes and then build that into the organization and start driving it up to scale. So we step by step, season by season, could do a little bit better this season than we did last season.
It's such an ambitious undertaking in a way, and especially with this scope, like we're going to be on the right side of history in a way. What is the first step? Do you have to go down to the sort of, is it in the design room, or do you go out to the factories, or do you go out to where do you source the material? You have to start somewhere very, very practical, I would imagine.
Yeah, but I would say that, it's all about just doing it. It's if you start to think about what to do,
right,
it won't happen. Then you will be like, okay, let's go through everything. It needs to be 100% clean before we do anything or say anything. Then everyone will just be like writing it up on papers, putting up to the next season, and then you have all the production cycles, sales cycles, and then it takes 3 years, 4 years, 5 years until you do anything. So the main thing from our end was to be like, okay, what can we do here and now? And change a little bit now and do it with someone that, so we could be quick out to market. So we decided to do, at that time, we decided to do a collab with Naturkompaniet, which is the
famous outdoor store here in Sweden.
Yes. And so we did it with them, and we contacted our factories because we know that there's a lot of leftover materials in the sample rooms. So we asked them if we could buy the small batches of leftovers from other companies' sample production. And we bought that and made a really small limited edition leftover rain jackets. And we made it from idea to retail or to the store in about 4 to 5 months. Wow. And we sold out in about 13 days. So we realized really fast that it's like, we like it, the retailers likes it, the consumers likes it, and when we could see the effect of it, it's also easier internally in the organization to get an understanding for that we can also not only talk about it because we feel it in the heart, but also we can talk about it because it's also business.
So do you think that was an important step, that the first project that you did was actually a sort of a success case that you could talk about internally? Because I assume it also, when you go into these types of projects and processes internally, it's about cost and money and what should you put your efforts in. How was the reception internally when you did it?
I mean, in all businesses, you have your margins. In all businesses, you have to earn money. Otherwise, you're not a sustainable business. No. So it's also about finding a way of making this to be successfully in an economic way. Otherwise, it won't. Otherwise, if we can't make money from it, we can't pay salary to our staff, and then we will go out of business. And that wouldn't be sustainable. So it's finding a balance of the new innovation, the sourcing with the margins, and the sales and distribution, and making that just transforming the first steps and making the same kind of kickback in the margins, and then it works. That's the business. But I mean, in the beginning, everyone is a little bit scared. It's when you come and you tell someone, it's like, okay, so we're a rubber company. We source rubber from Asia, and we do rain jacket from plastics, from polyester and with PU coatings. That's the core business of what we do. And now we're gonna transform this into a more eco-friendly and sustainable business. Of course, the first response is to be like, can we handle this? Don't do it. What's gonna happen? What happens if something goes wrong? And that's a good response, because you need to think about that. You need to understand it, and you need to like go it through your head a couple of times before you like decide, okay, this is what we actually can do. It's an honest way to do it, and you just need to find the different ways of how you can transform it in a trustworthy and authentic way. Because, I mean, our products hasn't changed so much since we started 1891. It's the same kind of minimalistic, functional design that goes with it. But the industry and how everything, the raw material and the fabrics are being produced, that's changed during the 125 years, or soon 130 years now that we've been in business. So when we started also to look on when we wanted to transform, was to start looking at that. If you produce a cotton shirt, you can go and see like, okay, is it grown or organic?
Right.
Can we watch the water and how it's grown and everything? Our raw material usually don't grow on a bush when you come to the jackets. No. So it's nylon or polyester based. So from our end, it was to start looking at, so where in the world can we find our golden bush? Like where is the nylon bush semi-natural in nature? Can we go out and harvest it somewhere? And we're starting to do the research about nylon and start looking into like, okay, so where does it end up after being used? And we came into the fishing industry and starting looking into like, okay, so if the fishing industry is buying all these trolling nets made out of nylon, and we found that they change the nets around every 2 to 3 years, but it takes about 600 to 700 years for nylon to kind of degrade. And a lot of the nets magically disappear because it costs money to put them into the garbage bins.
Meaning they dissolve into the ocean or let out into the ocean.
There's something that, I mean, I've been working as a diving instructor and running dive centers in Asia, and it's something that you notice is that people throw stuff in the water, and as soon as it goes below the surface, it disappears. They don't think about what happens with it. And we found that about 650,000 tons of fishing nets are floating around in the oceans as just debris, just floating. And when they float, they start to attract small fish, and the small fish attracts larger fish, and then it comes the mammals, and then they get entangled in the net, and it start to sink. And if that lands on a reef, it could stand there and sway in the currents and just destroy entire ecosystems. And everything just because someone dumped the net. And we're standing from our end and wondering, where's all the nylon? We want nylon to our jackets. So it was an easy way for us to start researching, like how can we get hold of that nylon? That's our bush. That's how we can harvest nylon for our jackets.
How did you find this specific? I mean, I'm sure starting with the raw material, and I'm sure that the first thing you realize is, okay, let's try to not produce as much new material as possible, meaning you have to go find old material that you can reuse. So how did you find this specific? How did you go to the ocean? Was that like, did you read an article somewhere, or did you know this because of your background in diving, or?
I mean, both. It all happens. It's karma. It's of course we saw it when I was running dive centers. Yeah. We were out. We were out often at nighttime diving because it was located in marine protected areas where the dive centers were. So you could see the nets floating on the reefs. But that's, I mean, it's 20 years ago. So, so a lot happened since then. It was a discussion we had in the company. And then some of our design teams were out doing research and meeting other passionate people. And they started talking about how this could be rescued from the oceans, upcycled and brought back into new life. And we started contacting them and talking with one brand called EcoAlf first, and then another brand called Econyl. And start talking with them about the process and how it could work and how you could do it and where it comes from and getting transported and stuff like that. And then we built up a system for ourselves to do the new weavings and the new fabrics for our functional jackets. So they would be rainproof, and you get the membrane so you can have the breathability and all of that. And since we also produce it all without any fluorocarbons and stuff like that, it was important for us to have control of everything.
What's fluorocarbon?
It's protective layers.
Okay. Okay. So what was the next step then? You did another batch, another collection, another season with this Econyl or these materials? Yeah.
First we started with the first season we did it was also with Naturkompaniet.
Right.
And we did that, and that was called the Ghostnet project, where we used part of the project to do it as produce the jacket and communicate it to the consumer. But part of the project was also to communicate about the problems in the oceans. So we started to talk with a lot of different opinion makers around the world, and was actually highlighted at the World Ocean Conference in New York when they had the opening ceremony. And then
when was this? Like 2017?
Yes. So when they opened there, and also been, I mean, our Crown Princess Victoria has been using it for when she does opinion work for the water days. But mainly what happened then was that we
and she's not the first family member to use the Tretorn product. Her dad also used the...
Yes,
sneaker,
yeah.
right?
Her dad was actually, there was before he was our king, and when he was the prince, he was a model on our catalog in 1972 called Skohornet.
That's wonderful.
So he was wearing the Olympic sneaker. It was the official official sneaker for the Summer Olympics in 1968 Mexico City and 1972 in Germany.
We'll go back to that. Sorry, I was digressing. It's a fun connection there with the generations of the royals.
I mean, we've been supplying the royal court since 1915.
Right.
So we've been there for a while.
So the Princess Victoria used this. Was this specific jacket that she started using?
Yeah, it was. And but I mean, from our end, it was. It would be an easy project to do. To go in, you buy it, you boost it up with marketing, you bring it out, you get a few influencers or bigger influencers to use it, and then you move on to the next thing. But in our perspective, this is more of what we call our Ocean Net program, a way of how we can incorporate this in more products and in changing other fabrics and building up to be more of a broader category to look at. So we started with Naturkompaniet. We launched one jacket. And that jacket, I mean, it's 400 jackets. So, I mean, it's... You sell that and you move on to the next phase, and you bring it in to be an inline product so you can drive it up to scale. And then we learned how the process worked with it, so we can change the weaving and increase the premiumness of the products, and then also transform it into bags and into sneakers, so we could have a full Ocean Net program of products. And the next step for us is that we're actually partnering up with an organization called Sea Life Trust. That is, I mean, they're based out of UK, but they have marine sanctuaries all around the world, protecting turtle sanctuaries, seal sanctuaries, do ghost net removal projects, and I mean, they're based out of London Aquarium and have their own cleaning process. They run the Global Beach Cleaning Day on the World Ocean Day. So it's a big organization that inspire and educate people around the world about the situation in the oceans. So from our end, it's a way of contributing back to, instead partnering up with them. We build a program with more products, and then we partner up with them and we give 10% to the Sea Life Trust so they can build that into marine sanctuaries and to the ghost net removal projects and the beach cleanups and start removing the plastics and the nylons again. And we continue working with it and educate around the problems.
How does that process work, partnering up with an organization like that? Do you get vetted by them in some way, or
I hope so. I hope that they don't just pick anyone. No, I mean, of course, they when you go on the bigger global organizations, of course, they're picky. They know what they want, and they're pretty hard on saying what's okay and what's not. So we started talking with a few different marine conservation organizations. But we ended up with the Sea Life Trust because we got a feeling for them and their work on how they're doing it. They're entrepreneurs. They're running a big big organization, but in a small kind of way. It's kind of the same as we as in Tretorn are. We're also a garage band, but acting all over the world. So from our end, it was a way of looking into that. Do we share the same kind of values? Do we produce it in a way that it's honest and authentic so they can stand for it? And then just partnering up on what we wanted to do. So we launched this at the London Aquarium on January 30.
It's going to be exciting. So and are there other organizations that are part of that event as well, or is it like a joint event with you two?
No, it's a partnership between us and Sea Life Trust.
Right. Oh. Exciting. I mean, you come from communications, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. Obviously, there is a great debate going on around sustainability. We have Swedish activist Greta, obviously getting a large audience for her message out there. I feel like during these 3 or 4 years that you've been working on the Eco Essentials initiative, there's been a major shift in the sort of public opinion around sustainability. Is this something that you sense as a consumer brand, that your consumers are actually requesting this more, or at least are more sort of receptive to these types of products, or what's your? I'm curious about your take on that, or your.
I would say definitely it is. It's growing a lot. When we started with it in 2016, I would say that it was something that you talked about. And you talked about it in smaller groups. A lot of people that were knowledge about the situations, they talked about it, and they know how important it was. The main market, they were like, yeah, it's good to think about it, but I mean, and we could see in the same way as the food industry went before. When everyone start talking about like eco fruit and eco bananas and stuff, people were like, it's kind of like, yeah, it's for the hippies or the guys out in Järna, and they can do that. And then all of a sudden it just changed. And one of the big retailers were like, okay, we cut all the non-eco bananas. You can only find eco bananas here. And then it all starts, and it starts moving, and it goes really fast when the tipping point is getting there. And we could sense that when we started doing it, we were speaking to a smaller audience. There was kind of like dedicated doers. They were into it. They know about the real danger. They know about what's happening. They know about the facts with it. And we could communicate with them, and they got into all the projects that we did. But now we noticed that it's going out to be more of a mass market thing. So they start saying that they know that you as a brand can produce things in a better way than you do.
Right.
So if you as a brand doesn't do that, it means that you
not doing enough.
Yeah, you screw them over. and we usually look at it, if you look at on branding as a brand to be a friend to the consumer. If you were a consumer to Tretorn, and I would be bullying you in the schoolyard, you wouldn't like me. No. And if I would be ripping you off on money, you wouldn't like me. But if we share the same kind of value system, that means we're not bullying, we're taking care of that, we're not throwing rubbish over there, we're not doing all these bad things, then we would stay friends. So it's kind of the same way with branding now when you're doing it value-based, is that if you don't share the same value systems, the consumers will go. And now they start asking for all the companies to be like, come on, we know you can do better. If you don't do it, it means you doesn't care. And then we won't support you.
And how do you, I'm always curious to hear, like personally, there's data that suggests that the apparel industry or clothing industry is like the second most polluting industry in the world, and so forth, and when you put the discussion on that level, it almost becomes numbing. It almost becomes like this is can't even take it in a way. So for you as a brand, obviously working with these types of products, you're a consumer brand, you have to make money. I'm sure there's a demand to grow the company from shareholders, etc., or owners. How do you tackle that from I don't know, both sort of a mindset and a practical perspective? Do you like ignore that and just go, like you say, like go for the project, like just do it, or is there other ways to tackle that?
I mean, you as a company or us as a company, everyone that runs a company needs to earn money. That's otherwise, as we said before, you go out of business. And then the way from that insight, we have to earn money, to actually earning it, and earning it for now over 130 years. You have to think about the process of producing products in a more with a more long-term perspective. So I would say that the fast fashion mentality, it's not something that we stand for, and we don't think it is sustainable for the future. I don't think that you could build a true sustainable fast fashion brand. No. But I think that you could build a more sustainable, more responsible clothing or fashion or outdoor or producing brand if you have a more long-term perspective in it. So if you build the products in, as we see that we design them not for like the seasonal trend, but we design them in a Tretorn style instead of following the trend. So they last longer, they don't go out of date so fast. So you can have them, you can pass them on for the next generation. Most people in Sweden have a couple of rubber boots in the summer house that they have from their grandfather or something like that. It's you pass them on. And that doesn't impact in the same way as the buy and throw away culture. So if you design it for long lasting use and you produce it for the same, and then if you start working with, and that's also something where we could be better, that we start thinking more of now, to have building in changeable parts, being better at that. So when something happens, it's easier for you to change the zipper, change the buttons instead of throwing it away and buying a new one. So that's also the next thing. And also building up more of the care and repair kits so you can take care of your products so they can last for a longer time. So if you build a business like that, of course, you won't have the same fast turnover, but you have a long and steady growth.
What does innovation mean to you?
Innovation means to have an idea to solve a problem that maybe you didn't really know before that you have, and to find a way of you to be more comfortable in, say, different environments, wearing that product or wearing that, so I can increase like the enjoy your life. I mean, to be innovative, I would say, means that you usually think a little bit outside of the box, but you shouldn't think too much outside of the box, because it also needs to be something that can be commercialized. I think that a lot of innovations are nice to have, but some innovations that is really true, genuinely good innovations, it's also a new way of thinking, and you can drive it up to scale to actually do a lot of good.
Curious about the balance between, because when you're a manufacturing company like you are so heavily relying on sourcing materials. So how much of this process is actually changing your internal processes and stuff, and how much is actually sourcing the right type of material and working with the suppliers?
I would say the key to start is to work with the sourcing suppliers. And they are growing so much better. It's going so fast. The transformation is like for what happened 10, 15 years ago when people were talking about it, and what's happening now. It's a different world. So if you work with your sourcing partner, you ask them the correct questions. You need to do your own homework to ask the correct questions and do the correct research for the sourcing partners. And then they can help you a lot. And most of the sourcing industry is transforming into renewable or recycled or recyclable fabrics and materials. So a lot of them wants to do good. It's not that they have this old view of the smog and the production that goes on in some of the Asian countries, but a lot of them is transforming, and it's going. Usually, they transform faster than a lot of the brands. So, when we started, it was to go out there and say, "Hey, this is what we want," and start asking the correct questions. And all of a sudden, someone's like, "I know where to find it," and then they could help you on the way because they have the best knowledge to find the small nitty-gritty parts. And then the next step was to think about, okay, but what kind of construction in the different fabrics do we want? And start asking about that and getting the sourcing into that and building the components in it. So I would say that the sourcing industry is super important for this, and they can help the brands to transform fast.
It's also fascinating to me to learn how, because it's almost like a chain reaction that needs to happen. If it starts with the consumer or the brands, like the consumer demands a more sustainable product, the brands have to then start doing their research and doing their homework, as you say, and then go out to the suppliers. So it becomes sort of like a chain reaction of things that has to happen. Are there things that you would like suppliers to do, or are there ways you feel like they should produce that isn't happening right now, that you are like, I really want this to happen, but I can't do it because the source material isn't there?
No, I would say I would put it the other way. Actually, it's that I would say that the sourcing industry is really good. Right. They are transforming fast, and they are speeding up on finding new fabrics and finding new solutions. Who's not on the right side is mainly the governments, I would say, and the logistics when you come to the end consumer experience. So or past the end consumer experience. So I mean, from our end, it's easy to build up, find the fabric, build up everything in one component. Let's say from recycled PET. We're taking PET bottles, bringing it in, making a new jacket, all made in recycled PET, so it is recyclable again. But when the consumer have used it, there's no way to place it. There's no way to put it. So you can put it in to the normal recycling bin again, but then it comes in too low in the value chain.
Right.
So it needs to have a system for the logistics to get in, to have biodegradable bins for clothing for the consumers to put it, recyclable polyester, recyclable nylon. If that comes in place, I would say it would be an easy transformation for brands to do 100% nylon jacket, 100% PET jacket, 100% biodegradable jacket.
Right.
And but since that is not in place, it's we can do it. And we also have done it, but we just hope now that the jacket's gonna last so long in the life expectancy with the consumer, so this is sorted out before they have to.
So what you're saying is basically like with food today. If you live in Stockholm, usually there's a way to sort your waste in different ways, like the paper and plastics and even the food waste. You would need a similar type of infrastructure around textiles or other
Around
types of
clothing,
yeah, around clothing.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming also almost any other consumer product that needs to be sorted in better ways, like furniture and so forth. But let's stick to clothing. You need like separate bins for cotton, for nylon, for
that would be good, because I think if that comes up, then the consumer will be educated about, okay, it's hard to recycle a jacket that is made out of mixed fabric. If you have polyester and cotton in it, it's hard to recycle, because how are we going to separate the cotton and the polyester? And then it's easier to put it in restmaterial. So if you start building that system up, it would be easier for the consumer to understand how a recyclable product should be produced with a single fabric. And then it would be easier for the brands to jump on board with that, and taking that with the sourcing industry, and they start producing it. So then you would have that chain easier to be built up. It's just
that's such a fascinating topic. I feel like we can talk forever about this and what could be done. And one last question on this issue. I'm curious how, from your perspective. I mean, obviously the issue of global warming is a global issue. It's not like it can't be solved by one company or one country. It needs to be sort of a international global solution that or initiatives that have to be in place. Speaking around the clothing industry, are there things that you think the EU or other more international organizations can do in terms of legislation around either how to communicate around fabrics, how to price, which materials you actually are allowed to source?
I mean, there is legislations about the sourcing parts, and it's also about the chemicals, and you have the REACH, and you have all that kind of restrictions.
Right.
But what I think is that something that would be good would be, and I know there was one PM in England put it up to the government there, but it was voted down. Where they had like a tax on if you make a jacket with over 50% recycled PET, you get a tax reduction on that jacket, and if you make it in virgin PET, you get the increased tax, which would be kind of like the same fat and sugar tax discussions,
right?
And I think that kind of laws or legislations, that I think that could work in some ways, because if you're in an industry, you usually work with the polyester. It's easy to say, okay, if you have polyester in your jackets, let's put a tax on virgin polyester.
Right.
Why not? And then people will be, okay, so then we source recycled polyester. And then you put a tax on, okay, it needs to be recyclable again. Okay? And then you start moving it in. So in some way, I think legislations would be good. But if you leave it to someone that doesn't know the industry, it's bound to go crazy. I think they will make the wrong decisions on like putting tax
like a
on the wrong...
that doesn't know the industry.
Exactly, yeah. So it needs to be some industry initiative that it's made together with the politicians.
Right.
To build it up and say what is doable, how can it work, and then build up the systems for it.
I think a more radical view on this would be that if this were not is not in place, it becomes almost like unjust situation on the market where companies that don't take as much responsibility, use these virgin materials because they're cheaper and so forth. Their margins go up. They earn money faster. They become bigger, and companies that take responsibility aren't able to catch up in a way. So to sort of even the field a little bit, you need actually legislation, because you can't expect all the companies to take the same type of responsibility.
Yeah, in a way, that would be. It's and usually also when you have companies that works in like continuously discount world, low price, fast, and campaigning for it. Of course, there's somewhere on the line, someone is not getting paid. If it's either because they use a not so sustainable fabric, or someone in the factory is not getting paid. I mean, the price of the product, you could be transparent with it. If you show the price of the product, you can see that those are selling it to a certain price. It's something that is not correct anyway.
Let's go back a bit to talk about the history of Tretorn, and I'm curious about when you joined the company. It was like 5 years ago or something. What was your view of the company when you started, and what did you want to sort of do with it?
I mean,
did you know the history of the company when you were
I did.
Yeah.
My girlfriend is from Helsingborg,
right?
Yeah, and my sister lives down in Helsingborg. So I know, I know very well about it.
Which is the origin city of the company, where it was founded in the late 1890s.
Founded in Helsingborg, 1891, by a family with a last name Dunker.
Right.
So they started it, and it was the January 3rd, 1891, where they started building the factory. I didn't know so much about it. I had no idea about it. We had done collab with ABBA in 1976 to make the wooden clogs for them. Right. I didn't know that. But I know the basics around the rubber boots and the tennis and the apparel and where it come from and some of the history. But not many people know the whole picture of Tretorn. My first presentation when I was hired was from our CEO we had at the time, and the first slide he put up was like Tretorn, the best kept secret. So this is one of the best kept secrets that we have. We've been doing this business now for at that time then about 125 years, and not so many people know the whole scope of what we're doing. That Björn Borg played tennis on the Great China Wall with our tennis balls, and it's so from my end it was a lot to read in on. It was to get the full picture of it, because I started as global PR manager. Right. So my work in the beginning was also to build up the PR network in our key markets. And then, of course, you work with a lot of the storytelling, a lot of stories from the archive, a lot of where we're going and what we're doing. So, but...
you seem to enjoy it, though. Like, it seems like every time I meet you, you have a new story that you dug up from the archives somehow.
Yeah.
From the world of Tretorn.
Yeah, I love it. It's... I never met a brand with so much in the archives. Right. So this is not... something I say only because I work at Tretorn. It's just something that every time you change a page and you just start reading something, it's something new just that comes up. There's amazing stories that just pops up from the archive.
So let's get some of the basics right here. So the brand started with. It was not started with rubber boots. It was started with galoshes, right?
Yes.
And then moved on to... Did the sneaker come before the rubber boot, or was it the other way around?
Yes, it did. It came in the same time, right. so to say. So it started because the farmers at that time were working in the fields, in the agriculture fields in the southern parts of Sweden, in wooden clogs. And at that time, almost no one could vulcanize rubber. That was a really innovative way of producing protective wear. So the Dunker family, they bought factories or machines from US, and start building up the factory floors and started making galoshes. It was actually made with a wooden insole. So it was like a rubber wooden clog for the farmers to work in to protect their feet. And soon after that, it came with, because then they got the techniques for the rubber. So everything comes from how can we maximize from what we learn how to do with the rubber. So we started with the galoshes, came in with rubber boots, sneakers, tennis balls, all based with the rubber as a core,
right?
But also with some of the interest with the core. So tennis was a big interest. So of course was a big interest of starting producing tennis balls. And with the sneakers came, I mean, the 1st of May, year 1900.
I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but that was one of the most fascinating facts I did not know about Tretorn when I met you. I mean, I think we've known each other for a couple of years now, and one of the first things you told me was the fact that Tretorn had made I think is it the second sneaker ever in the world?
The second sneaker brand.
Second sneaker brand.
Yeah.
Right.
As far as we know.
Right. And the first
I
would be,
say,
is it the Keds or
Keds,
in the US?
Keds that was owned by the American Rubber Company.
Right.
So American Rubber Company started a sub-brand Keds and did a sneaker. And then we made one in 1900 that we launched that we have from the Swedish Business Archive. This big screen on what is called. So the 1st of May it came out. Probably was a little bit before that, but
right.
that's
first evidence.
The first, yeah.
And it looked very like it was like a very it's almost like a classic tennis shoe, white, clean. It's
clean,
not
clean
unsimilar to what's sort of on the market right now, you know.
Yeah, it's not so much has happened for 120 years.
It's just fascinating given where we are in culture and the role that sneakers have in our culture right now. That
I mean, I would also say that I mean it's true in one way.
Right.
It's the style from that sneaker has been an iconic style for now soon 120 years. But in the same way, the sneaker industry, of course, has gone bananas on the other way with the basketball and the Yeezy boots and all that. So it's, I would say, the sneaker industry from two worlds. But the style has lived, and we are relaunching it now the 1st of May, year 2020, as a 120-year anniversary. Right. So first shown at Pitti now on the 7th of January.
It's going to be exciting stuff. But one other detail is there's an iconic. I think anyone who's surfed the web or Instagram or Tumblr or whatever for inspirational photos from the history of style. There's an iconic picture of Steve McQueen sitting in a sofa, with completely white outfit and holding a gun towards the some target. And he has a pair of white sneakers on, and those are actually Tretorn as well.
As far as we know.
Okay.
I mean, it is a debate, and it's a 50-50 debate of if it's us or Togs, I think. Or something like that. Yeah, but then. During that time, we had the racket, the Davis Cup sneaker, that is exactly like that. And when we go back to the archives and go back to the articles, a lot of the people that looked into it are really sure that it's us, but we doesn't have the actual proof from him or from someone in our archive that says yes, we gave him the shoes. So.
Okay. And from the origin of the turn of the century, did Tretorn always produce sneakers, or was there a gap there? I'm not sure I know the history on this.
No, we've been producing it all the time. Right. It's been, but not mainly sports sneakers. It's also been like classic summer shoes and stuff like that. But we have. And that's also what we're bringing back now from our like archives. We're bringing back what we call the number series. So we're bringing back now 1955, the tournament is released now. The racket and the Steve McQueen, that's from 1961. And the Nightlight, one of the big icons, is from 67.
Right.
And then we're launching the Olympic that came for the Summer Olympics in 68. That's number 68.
And that was an official shoe, right?
Yeah, for the Swedish team,
right.
Both in 68 and 72. So we're launching that now in time for Summer Olympics in Tokyo.
Nice. Nice. And how do you make these decisions of relaunching these? You haven't had them in the collection for the past years. Did you bring them out from the archive, or you're just remodeling them from something that you already have?
I would say that, the Nightlight has never gone out.
No.
It's been one of those styles that, not many people here in Scandinavia know about it. They know, it's one of those canvas shoes. I think Björn Borg wore them.
Yeah.
And that's about what they know. But if you go, you mentioned the Steve McQueen image, but with the Nightlights we have Elvis Presley
tons, right?
on Hawaii with them, with some beautiful girls. And we have Irvin Kershner on the shoot of the Star Wars movies, and Arnold Schwarzenegger and everyone. We had Aretha Franklin as an ambassador for the Nightlight, and
Billy Joel, right? No.
Billy Joel on the 52nd Street album.
Yeah.
So we call that that's our iconic sneaker, and that is also actually going the best commercial sneaker around the world. So it's big in Japan, UK, Philippines, and US. But
you're actually saying is that in Scandinavia or in Sweden, we're the ones that know this the least.
We're
not proud enough of our heritage.
I would say that Scandinavia is our smallest sneaker market in the world.
That's crazy to me.
So even the Philippines is like 100 times bigger.
Well, they have a lot of people in the Philippines.
They have, and we used to produce them there in the 70s and 80s.
Okay, so there's a connection there. So when you go back and do this research, and when you bring them out as a new, because now you're for instance the Olympic sneaker, what do you add from present day to them?
What we have done with the sneaker is that we actually transformed all of them into the Eco Essentials initiative. And what not so many people know is that the footwear industry is way behind the apparel industry in transforming into taking more responsible steps.
A huge discussion to have around sneakers then.
Yes, it's a big thing. And not many people know that even if you buy a sneaker that looks like natural rubber, like a gum sole, it's probably to 90% only plastics in it. And not many people know what it's constructed of and how it's sourced or how it's built together. So when we made the decision for SS19 to relaunch our sneakers and take a bigger control of the productions of the sneaker, we partnered up with a new factory in Vietnam that also has an eco mindset in how they work, and we're really good in the sourcing and how we could bring in our raw materials, the natural rubber and stuff like that. So we started to eliminate as much plastics and stuff from the outsoles we could, and built up a program with natural rubber of 30 to 50 and 60% in the soles. So you get more of a bouncing sole, more of a tennis ball feeling in the sole. And then we have a no-spill policy. So the leftovers from the outsoles are built in to be a new foam for the insoles to the sneakers. So it's recycled or leftover rubber for the insoles in it. And then we managed to do a sourcing program to do only locally sourced canvases from from Vietnam around the factories. And when we work with leather, it's a lot of them is not with leather. Then we work with a sourcing or a tannery called Tantec that is run by solar power and wind power, have their own wetlands, and we can trace the leather back to the farm so we can see how it's all been handled and stuff like that. So we managed to do a lot of the sneakers into recycled with natural rubber and to make them vegan. And then a few we use with the same recycled, but with leather that we can trace. And then we also built up a line that comes with the ocean net top that is from the regenerated nylon from fishing nets. Okay. So the entire line of sneakers, even if we're bringing back the numbers from where it is. So if it is from like a Campus from 1940, or if it is a Nightlight or a Tournament from 55, we're all building it in the new Eco Essentials construction. So the contemporary part is the eco mindset and some design features to have fit and comfort. It's a little bit better now with the knowledge now than it was in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So we're increasing the comfort and fit, and then building on the strong eco story.
So this is a great example of how you apply the sort of eco essentials way of working to new product categories. I mean, you started with the jackets, and now you're going into sneakers.
To the next one, yes.
So is that how do you think about that internally? Is that you have like a rule, like any new product that you launch has to be like an eco essentials now, or how do you, or is it based on what you are able to do, or?
It's more on that. Is that all new products has to be shot through a filter of the eco essentials, right? But not all of the products will end up to be classified as eco essentials. So to be that, it needs to have more than 50% recycled PET. Okay. It has to have a few certain points for it. So, but most of them are. But then it's also hard for us to do, like, take the rubber boots, for instance, where it's like they're all made in natural rubber. So we don't have the PVC or the PUs in them. So that's a natural way in it. Right. And we have a no-spill policy, so we're bringing in 40% recycled rubber for the soles, stuff like that. But we still don't call them an eco-essentials product. It's a responsibly produced product, but it still doesn't have gone over the tipping point to be what we want to call as it. So we shoot them through the filter, but I would say most of them end up to be in the eco essentials. And when we're starting like a new category, so after sneakers, we started to produce rainproof bags. And of course, when we start a new category, it's easy for us to go and say, okay, we calculate on making this all in recycled PET. That's it. And then that's our next step with it. So all the bags are made in recycled PET and then covered with PU. So new categories and new styles will usually end up as eco-essentials.
And perhaps it's easier also because you don't have the history of, or perhaps the volume to take care of. I would assume rubber boots is still a volume product for you to handle.
It's that's a big big thing for us. Right. So when you do, it's easy if you haven't sold a bag before. Let's make it eco-essentials. But if you sell 20,000 pair of a rubber boot and you change a little bit in it and it comes out and it cracks, not so good. So we have a few innovation projects running, but it moves a little bit more cautious on the boats than on new categories.
I think you have the role of creative director now. Is it a year or year and a half or something like that?
About a year. Yeah.
You came in through communications. Do you see yourself as a designer, or how do you see?
No, no. I'm not the designer. I'm not. Okay. That's not my.
Clearly stated.
Yes, I would say that
But you run the design team, so
No,
I mean, how do you? What's your take on design? How do you view that process?
We merged the way of working with design and communication.
Right.
So to build into, if you go to way back, you produced a product to sell it. But today, the product needs a narrative. And the narrative of the eco stories and the eco values and the communication starts in the product. So the product is our hero. That's what's going to communicate of what we do. So we need a way to have that mindset in the sourcing, in the building, and in the creation of it. So we don't have one silo doing one thing and then one silo go out and just marketing it. So we build the story of the products to come out from idea to consumer experience.
I mean, that's obviously it's a modern way of working in a way, and I think we see more and more that people from, I think like take Virgil Abloh and Louis Vuitton, he's like a master communicator, and there's a debate around is he a designer or not, but there's another take on that I think it's important here, is that if you merge the story with the product development, you also get these other kinds of responsibilities in it, because if you start thinking about how do we actually sell this to the market, how do we communicate this, and I'm curious about your process here, because if the story is eco-essential, it becomes more than just a story. It's not just something. It's not something you write as a copywriter. It's something you have to implement in the organization, in the production, and in everything. So that drives the design in many ways.
And I would say that it's driven from the differences of being, if you say like the old school way of doing it, to be a production and marketing driven. You have a production cost and then you have a marketing budget to market it. If you instead working with a value system, where it's like, we stand for this is what we do, this is what our mission is to inspire people to do this, then that needs to start in the idea making, the research. So when we have the creative team, now is when we start planning our fall winter 21, what we want to do, both marketing and the design team. So bring it in together and work together with the stories and the ideas. So that kind of conceptualize the research phase. And if we build the stories into the products, then we don't also have to spend so much money on the marketing, because the product speaks for itself. Right. So it's also a way of making it more sustainable in the long run, because you don't need to have that huge marketing budget. I'm shooting myself in the foot now because my CEO will hear this. But
we're 1 hour in to the interview. We'll see how long he watches the whole thing. I think that it's also interesting with your background, because you I mean, okay, so we studied you're not a designer, you come from communications, you have a background in the communications world here in Stockholm, but you're also a former chef, and you started out in sort of the streetwear skate community, right?
Yeah, I started working when I was 16 at a store called G-Spot.
Legendary.
It's been legendary. Yeah.
Me from the outside, I was never part of the skate community, but I had friends.
It was a store that was later to say that community around G-Spot turned into be VSC.
Right.
And it was we all were kids at the time, but it was a skate and snowboard lifestyle. Right. That was going.
I forget. Are you from Stockholm or are you from?
I am.
Yeah. Right. So, what do you think? Have you brought anything from your background in skate and snowboard into triathlon? You think?
I would say definitely. I would say that I bring from all my different backgrounds, because I've been really like changing careers during my life, and I would say now a lot of the people from that time are either running businesses or running other one's business within this industry, and you kind of grow a street smart way of thinking instead of having the linear budgets and all that. You kind of like work in a different way because you come from an industry that grown out of no money. Driven by young kids with a passion, and they just wanted to have fun and do their thing. And to have that kind of mindset, it helps when you work in this business, because it's you kind of find new ways of doing stuff.
I remember when you told me you did a collaboration with the Finnish brand Makia. That's out. It's out now, right?
It's been out. It was launched in August.
Yeah, it was the fall winter 19. That one of the connections that you found is that you have this the stand next to each other at Pitti Uomo in Florence, and then you realized you sort of had the same kind of streetwear or street background.
Same background, yeah. It started with we were back to back at Pitti Uomo, and it started with that Pitti gave us the rights to have a logo on their side of the wall, which was very strange. So we kind of started talking to each other, and we humbly took down our logo because we also didn't want it next to them. And then Jonas, very called Ass, Jonas Vihage, that's been running Boutique Sportif and loads of skateboard stores back in the days. He just came over and was like, hey, you guys should know each other. It's just half a generation between you in the skate and snowboard world. So then we started talking, and we decided to do a collab around that spot that Pitti Uomo gave us, the logo sign that we put on. We found that was kind of our Åland, the archipelago of Åland, and the demilitarized zone between Finland and Sweden that Finland owned, but they were speaking Swedish. So we decided to do a collab around Åland and built in the colors of the Åland flag and making it all in recycled PET and the mindset of a lone sailor man sailing around Åland.
Coincidentally, the sort of red Cousteau-like hat you have is, or
it's from the collab, yeah.
Right. Speaking of collaborations, I mean, obviously it's something that we've seen more and more in the industry, and it's something that you've sort of spearheaded or worked with within the company. And to me, from the outside, it seems like Tretorn is such a great vehicle for collabs. Why is collabs important, and why do you think you do it so well?
I think it actually comes back to one of the sayings I had before. Is we look at ourselves. We're all entrepreneurs, and we look at ourselves a little bit as a garage band. So we kind of try to find ways with other brands to do something that drives us both to be a little bit greater than we are on the solo. And we always, we've been a brand with an authentic heritage that's been, but also been connected through the tennis industry, the horse industry, the riding community, the hunting community, the hiking community, and with that also came into the music community. So we always had this weird kind of movement around Tretorn. So
and also like different movement, like different verticals even.
Different verticals, but with the same kind of lifestyle still. So it's like we've been walking around in that world, and since we are trying to be humble, we like to do a lot of collabs. And I mean, now in since the Eco Essentials initiative, we have it as a saying that we need to collaborate rather than compete. As you say, this is not something that one country can solve. All the nations needs to do it, and all the brands needs to do it. So if we can do collaborations now where we can inspire other brands to do a little bit more, then we like to do that, and like to get into learn from them, and they can learn from us, and together we can bring it up to be a little bit better when we go off and do our own things. But it also, I mean, we started very early, as we said before, 1976, we did the ABBA collab. So we launched the ABBA clogs, the wooden clogs for the tour in 1976 on the US market.
Right, that's so funny. You've also done stuff, but prior to you moving into the company, you did stuff with Acne and Comme des Garçons and more sort of fashiony type collaborations. Is that something that you're looking at as well, or?
I would say yes, and those were actually run by our new CEO when he was working at Tretorn back in the days.
Exactly, that's true.
So he was working then on the marketing end, and now he's back as CEO again. So. Of course it is. We're working on a few collabs, both here in Scandinavia and abroad. But those are a little bit too early to talk about. Right. I will tell you the first, as soon as it's official. But the collabs coming up now, it's of course with the one we're doing with Nigel Cabourn. Yeah. And that's built around our heritage up in Sarek. And it's also built around the pillars of the Eco Essentials. And since we have kind of a similar idea of products, it's very timeless pieces, and we have a retro style, and we all have a heritage in both from the military and hiking and stuff like that. So it's an easy fit in the design. But then we have a stronger step, I would say, taken in the Eco Essentials sourcing parts of it. So now we're bringing out the first collab hits the market now in SS20.
Yes, so that was presented last summer.
Last summer, yes. So now that hits the shelves, and the second one we're launching now at Pitti Uomo.
Right. With so when this conversation is out, I think it's going to be out for people to at least view it on.
To know where
it is. So on scandinavianman.com or probably other platforms as well.
Perfect.
So when you approached Nigel, or I don't know if it was the other way around, but what is it that you find in this collaboration? What is the merger here? How do you give and take from each other?
He's a happy guy.
He is. He's been on the podcast, so I've interviewed him. He's a hilarious guy. He's a wonderful personality.
We started talking to him because we were working with his daughter, Sophie. And then when we were down at Pitti Uomo, he came over and we started talking, and we immediately just fell in love with what his brand stands for in designing products for long-lasting products with timeless design. Right. And the same kind of what sayings that we have. And if we could merge that together and have fun during the way and create some more eco stories within the products, it would be a fun thing to do. So we introduced him to Sarek and the styles up there and the inspirations from there. And then he starts looked into it, and we started creating those 70s inspired hiking jackets made out of regenerated nylons from the fishing nets and stuff. So
it's also kind of the first time he's worked with these types of sustainable materials.
It is. He's been working with Ventile, right. Mainly for a long time. And that's, you could... it's only 2% of the cotton industry that produce that kind of cotton. And it's really durable and really long-lasting. So, I would say that he do sustainable products in his way. But he hasn't worked with this kind of newer fabrics that has a recycled or a more sustainable or eco approach to them. So for him, this was the first, and we were happy to introduce that and bring it out. And he loved the fabric when he started looking at it, and we made a really exclusive new kind of weaving for it that comes out, and it looks amazing.
Definitely, and I think it's also the first time that he's done this kind of wide range of products in one collection. I think at least the first one that's out now. It's the first time we did like
the first
shoes and jackets and the
bag.
And the bag,
yeah, exactly. So it's the first time. Usually he goes in and do a line of jackets or a line of boots or sneakers or something like that. So this is the first when you talk about like a uniform. Like when you go in here and you dress up in this, you get the first sneaker, bag and jacket, and the next one is a winter boot, bag and jacket. So it looks nice together, and it was a challenge for him as well to puzzle everything in, because it's all of a sudden it's 3 different factories, it's 3 different lead times, it's 3 different development processes, and it's 3 different knowledges in his design team and 3 different people from our design team. So all of a sudden it was a little bit more than when you do like one jacket.
There's another factor here that I think is interesting with what he's done and the whole Sarek collection, because there's there's several things that coincides into this collection or the work you do, and you have the Eco Essentials sort of process, you have the design sensibility from Nigel, but you also have the Sarek heritage.
Yeah.
Which I think we should talk about that for a while, because that's an interesting story, both from a sort of branding perspective, that you realized that you had the actual trademark for the name.
Yeah.
But I just want to know about the place. It's one of those iconic, wonderful Scandinavian locations, right?
It's amazing just to open up. It's Sarek is the largest untouched wilderness in Europe, which means that you have it's forbidden to even fly a drone in there. So you don't have marked trails. You usually don't have cell phone connection, and you are pretty much on your own. And it's one place called the Wilderness Square, where you could find the most differentiated mix of wild predators.
Right. And it's exactly, or describe where it is. It's way up in the north.
It's way up in the north. That's exactly where it is. That's where it is. No, you...
How do you get there? You fly to Kiruna, or...?
You fly to Kiruna, or you can take the train up, which is a more eco-friendly way to do it. It's a very, very nice overnight train.
Yeah. What is it?
And then
14 hours?
And then you start walking. Yeah. No? And then you take a bus either to Stora Sjöfallet or down to Kvikkjokk. And then you walk in. If you walk from Kvikkjokk, it takes about 2 to 3 days to walk into the start of the national park.
Wow.
And then you have a long walk through the park. It's totally untouched. The only, I would say, totally untouched, except for the Sami people that comes there for the reindeer migration. And you have the trails that you put up with stones, so you can kind of follow it and around. It's beautiful and unique fauna, and we created. We've been making hiking boats up there because it's wet. You have a river delta that is wide in the Rapa Valley, and the Sarek boot was produced for hiking in the area because you have so much rivers to go through. So you need rubber boots, and we started producing that. And in 1972, we were so associated with the regions, we were allowed to trademark it. So the trademark of Sarek is owned by us, and then of course for Sarek National Park. So when we now decided to bring back our heritage original 1972 hiking boot with wooden insole and everything, we realized or felt that the strength of Sarek was so much more than just to bring back our hiking boat. So we started to bringing back 70s inspired hiking jackets to make them, and everything in Sarek, since it is untouched wilderness, everything that we makes in the Sarek in apparel way is also going to be in the Eco-Essentials. So it's recycled and all that. So it comes in to have that same kind of mentality as I have. So then we started to...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but would that be the first boot you do within the Eco-Essentials line then, or?
The boot is not yet fully in, but all of the apparel is. Yeah. So the boat goes still with the same natural rubber, recycled rubber, and the wooden insole in it. But we haven't labeled it as Eco-Essentials, even if it is made very responsible. But then we started to producing to make a full, almost as a full category rather than just a line of jackets or this boot. So. And it's all inspired of the colors up in Sarek. So you have, if you can Google Rapa Valley spring and Rapa Valley fall, and you will just blow your mind when you watch the colors change. So we have the same kind of color change in the jackets or the apparel lines with it, and to top that, to bring that a little bit higher end, we brought in Nigel Cabourn into the Sarek. So he could do this top pyramid products inspired from the area, but that has a little bit wilder take on some of the finish.
And you not only brought him into the line, you actually brought him to Sarek, right?
Not yet.
Not yet? He hasn't been there? Okay.
No, not yet. So... we will. That's on his list.
Well, when he's going, I want to join because it just looks fantastic.
It's just that he's scared of flying helicopters.
Okay.
And the walk to the park is very long, and he's soon turning 73.
He's in good shape though.
He runs every day.
He's like a fitness freak these days.
Yeah.
But a 3-day hike just one way is
no, you have
to schedule that.
You can get closer to the park with car on some dirt roads.
Right.
So it would be an easier walk with him in.
I'm curious a bit. I mean, obviously Nigel, British designer, has a great following globally. Even here in Scandinavia, some people know him. But when you go into the world as Tretorn, obviously with the Swedish heritage, how much do you push the Swedishness or the Scandinavianness? How important is that globally for you?
I would say that it's a part of our DNA. It's where we come from. So people look at us as a Scandinavian brand, and that comes with a few, responsibilities, I would say, because it goes in that the Scandinavian value system, it's pretty progressive on equality, sustainability, and how we look at the world. So since we have that, and also with the Eco-Essentials values that we have, kind of combines in. And we talk a lot about the Scandinavian simplicity, the Scandinavian type of designing that comes with our style and that our design team works with. So I would say that we push it. We don't go out and say Sweden and then Tretorn. We're Tretorn and we're from Sweden.
And what's your take on sort of the brand Scandinavia right now, or the take on Scandinavia globally? Is it a positive reaction, or
it's under threat?
Under threat. No, it's good.
It's As I told you before, I'm fanatic on reading in on American politics, but we have a lot of nutcases right now. So I would say that Scandinavia is really strong, what we stand for, in the values of mainly sustainability and equality. What we talk about as a common belief, a common understanding on how it is something that a lot of the world is talking about. Yeah, might be, could be some truth in it, but we'll see. So we are a very extreme country. What we take for granted is looked at as extreme values for a lot of countries. So we need to push it more. We need to talk about it more, and we need to drive the Scandinavian values out in the world, since it is good values. It's the humanistic values of taking care of each other, taking care of the planet. But as I said, it's under threat. I think that a lot of organizations around the world actually don't like so much what we do.
Why is that, do you think?
Because you have a juxtaposition in the world. It goes in trends, it goes in values, and the more progressive we be, the more conservative the other side will go. So when you have a progressive movement, when it starts moving into grow to be something big, then the conservative voices in the world also start to mobilize and start to grow stronger, and then they start to attacking it, and you get the more polarized world of the progressive and conservatives. So if we drive, when we drive the progressiveness and the sustainability and talk about the climate and equality and taking care of each other, also a lot of people in the world will start talking about, you're not doing it right. This is actually not good. Look at all these problems. Look at all this.
Do you see that as a brand as well, or?
I wouldn't say that we see it as a brand, as a commercial brand. I would say that as the brand Scandinavia, the brand Sweden, as a nation or a region, I would say that it is. But I would say also it happens the same if you take a stand and say, hey, we're doing something more responsible. We're going into doing this eco. Of course, you have to be prepared to be questioned.
Right.
There will always be people that say that you're not good enough. You're not doing it all the way. You're not doing that. So that's something you have to be prepared of. And as long as you have, as we tackle it, we have our manifesto that points out the direction where we're going, that says that we're gonna go that direction. It's a journey without an end goal. We're never gonna be finished. We're taking it step by step. And if someone then says that you're not doing enough, well, at least we're doing something. At least we're moving in that direction. So I think that's you have to be prepared of it. If you take a stand, if you're a country or a region or a brand, you have to be prepared of just also then stand up to defend it.
How much does the sort of evolution or development in technology affect your work or as a brand? Is that something you consider on a daily basis, or it's more like it's...
How do you mean? The digitalization?
Digitalization or even in manufacturing? Sometimes I get the sense that, I mean, obviously fashion, the world of fashion has changed due to, from a communications perspective. I'm also curious, are there things within production and innovations in production that are happening due to developments in innovation? Is it more like bring it back to the basics in terms of sourcing and so forth?
I mean, in one way it's bringing back to basic, I mean, in handmade and that stuff. But of course it is. It's a lot of stuff happening in manufacturing. We have the printing technology, the 3D printing technology, and how you can incorporate that. We're not doing that yet. But you're looking into it, of course, because you're interested in to see, like, okay, can you produce on demand instead of producing and then see how much you sell. So all of this is changing how we look at production and look at logistics and the product line management. Of course it is. But I think it's too early to say where it's all going to end up. It takes small steps in to be like, take like spin dye to go in. Like, okay, you break it in, coloring the pellets instead of coloring the weaving. Okay, that's one way. Okay, all of a sudden, that's changing. And people start looking into how they can do that on a broader scale. Before it was a few companies that did it. Now everyone can do it. And those small steps...
Are you working with spin dye?
No, we're not.
It's a Swedish company that does a new type of...
Yes, yeah. And today it's a lot of companies offering the same kind of service. So you need those brands that comes out and say, hey, look at this. And then it change a little bit. But then to look on the bigger changes, to see production on demand, 3D printing production on demand, super great. But then you also have a lot of factory workers you're going to take care of that doesn't have a work.
Right.
So it's I think the solution is to change slowly. If you change too fast, we as a community will have challenges to take care of as well.
Well, as the saying goes, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Someone told me once, or I heard it once. We're going to wrap up soon, and we'll be doing this for an hour and a half. I feel like I can go for another hour and a half, but we have other commitments as well. But so we are recording this just before Christmas, and I know you have a super busy January looking ahead of you, launching both the new Nigel Cabourn collection, the new sneakers, I guess a few more products from the Sarek and Eco Essentials lines, as well as this collaboration with the Sea Life. Is it Institute? No, Sea Life
Trust.
Sea Life Trust. Sorry about that. What are you most excited about?
Most excited would be when my daughter gets free from the chicken pox.
That's a good answer.
But in work-wise, it's really tough to say because we have a really busy spring. I would say that to see the Nigel Cabourn collaboration come out and hit the market, that would be strong in one way. But to actually launch the Sea Life Trust partnership and be able to create a system where we can contribute to the actual people, the grassroots out there actually cleaning the beaches and picking up the nets, that would be amazing when we get it out there. And then on the other hand, you have that we launching the first sneaker from 1900 in May. So you pick.
It's hard to pick. It's hard to pick, but we'll certainly commit to following your journey. To end, is there something else you want to recommend that's not Tretorn related?
Not Tretorn related. No, I say as they do in the movie. Love is all around you.
It's been great to have you on the show. Let's do this again sometime. Thank you so much for sharing your work and passion.
Thank you so much.
This has been The Innovators, an interview show from Scandinavian Man with me, Conrad Olsson. We'll be back soon with more conversations on design, culture, fashion, technology, and sustainability. For more news and interviews from the Scandinavian fashion and culture scene, visit scandinavianman.com. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.